Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into a really fascinating Pulitzer Prize-winning book about a president who was, well, a walking contradiction. He was a hero to the common man, but also the guy behind some truly brutal policies. We're talking about Jon Meacham's American Lion, Andrew Jackson in the White House. To really understand this guy, you have to start with his own words. And this quote, this wasn't just him talking. This gets right to the very core of who he was. For Andrew Jackson, holding the country together wasn't just a job. It was a sacred duty he'd die for. So Meacham's whole idea for the book is calling Jackson the American lion. And it's a perfect metaphor, right? Think about it. A lion is powerful, fiercely protective of its pride. But it's also a terrifying and destructive force to anything it sees as a threat. And that contradiction, that's what this book is all about. Now, a quick look at the book's profile tells you a lot. And check this out, the publication context. This came out during the Obama presidency, when everyone was debating the limits of presidential power. So looking back at Jackson's, let's call it aggressive use of power, felt incredibly timely. And this idea, democracy's double-edged sword, is really the key to the whole thing. Jackson was seen as this great champion of the people, expanding democracy. That's one side of the sword. But then you flip it over and you see the immense harm he caused. Meacham really makes you wrestle with both sides. So let's actually look at that sword, starting with the bright, shiny side of the blade, Jackson as the champion, the hero, the guy who saved the Union. Now this was a total game changer. Before Jackson, the president was kind of a distant figure. He basically looked at the office and said, nope, my power comes directly from the American people, not from elites in Washington. He turned the presidency into the powerful populist force we recognize today. And if you want to see that iron will in action, you got to look at the Nullification Crisis. South Carolina was furious about federal taxes and basically said, we're not going to follow this law, and we might even leave the country. Jackson's response? Absolutely not. He threatened to send in the military, flat out calling their bluff and saying, disunion by armed force is treason. Okay, but like we said, every lion has claws. And this is where the story, and Meacham's portrait, gets really dark and troubling. Because that same iron will that held the country together, it was also used to cause unbelievable suffering. And that brings us to the really tough question, doesn't it? What happens when a leader is so passionately convinced they're doing the right thing for the people that it leads to absolute catastrophe for others? This is the dark side of that unshakable self-belief. I mean, just listen to this. In his own words, Jackson basically admits the tragedy of what he's doing with the Indian removal policy. He sees it, and he does it anyway. This policy, enforced with brutal force, led directly to the Trail of Tears and the deaths of thousands of Native Americans. It's just devastating. Wow, this quote right here, it explains everything you need to know about his infamous bank war. Jackson was convinced the national bank was corrupt, so he decided to kill it, and this was his justification. My understanding of the Constitution is the only one that matters. Not Congress's, not the Supreme Court's, just mine. It was a huge hit with his supporters, but it sent the nation's economy into a tailspin. So after all this, the good, the bad, and the truly awful, what's the takeaway? What can we possibly learn from a leader who is so incredibly complicated? The lesson from Meacham's book is, honestly, it's pretty chilling for anyone in a position of power. Jackson was so absolutely certain that he spoke for the people that he became completely blind and deaf to the people he was destroying. He couldn't see the catastrophic human cost. And the takeaway is crystal clear. If you don't build a system to actively find and confront your own blind spots, your passionate convictions could lead you straight to disaster. All right, let's land this plane. How well did Jon Meacham actually do in capturing this incredibly messy, complicated story? So the book's biggest strength, for sure, is that it's a phenomenal read. Meacham is a master storyteller, and he gives you a really balanced view. Now, if there's a weakness, it's that sometimes it feels more like a great story than a super deep, dense academic analysis. But for most readers, that's actually a plus. So when we put it all together, for its masterful storytelling and its fair handling of a really difficult subject, our final grade for American Lion is a very, very strong 8.6 out of 10. And you can see here why it scores so high. Huge points for narrative quality and historical accuracy. Honestly, if you want to understand how the American presidency got so powerful and the deep contradictions at the heart of the country, this book is essential reading. Now, if this explainer got you hooked and you're thinking, okay, what's next? We've got you covered. Chernow's biography of Alexander Hamilton gives you another complex, flawed genius from that era. And then there's Team of Rivals, which shows a completely different leadership style with Abraham Lincoln, who was all about collaboration, the total opposite of Jackson. Let's just end with this final kind of haunting thought from Meacham. His argument is that we can't really escape Andrew Jackson. For better and for worse, the America we live in right now, with its powerful president and its populist streaks, well, we're still living in the country he built. Hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into the books and ideas that shape our world, you know what to do. Make sure to follow and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.